Sall is the founder and CEO of Giggle, a social network and social media platform for females. Prior to Giggle, Sall pursued her dream of screenwriting in Hollywood, but retired after almost 10 years due to sexual assault and harassment. While she sold screenplays, her movies were never made, probably because they were all about strong women who come to realize that they don't need a man. Sall currently lives in Australia, and her organization Giggle, you may have read on Facebook, has a wonderful billboard up at the University of Penn where Leah Thomas comes from, talking about the importance of female-only space. Let's hope that that billboard lasts. Is it still up, Sall?
Yes.
Whoa!
2 days. 2 days out of 30.
So the title of Sall's presentation for us today, The Importance of Female-Only Space.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me. So one thing I just want to share before I talk about female spaces, because it's something really cool that's happened in the last hour. So a bit of backstory. In January 20th of this year, Giggle and myself got an Australian human rights complaint from a trans-identified male in Australia who wants to use the app, and I won't let him. He has called my personal phone, he's sent emails, he's gone after on Twitter, and then did the human rights complaint. I haven't been able to talk about it publicly because in the complaint it says that the Australian Human Rights Commission would prefer I didn't talk about it publicly. And I'm like, well, I prefer not to have a human rights complaint so we don't all get what we want, do we? So I've actually just been given permission yesterday to talk about it. And then beyond that, I just got an email from Claire Chandler. So I'll read it to you because it's actually really cool. She said, "Hi Sal, just touching base." So we sent our response to the Australian Human Rights yesterday. We got an extension on it because I'd actually received the complaint while I was in isolation because I had COVID and I was pregnant. And I was just like I was in isolation. I was like, I can't even be around people like human beings, and I've got a human rights complaint. This is ridiculous. But anyway, so we were able to get a month-long extension in responding just because we wanted to respond as properly and as we possibly could. And I'll share some of the response as well. But so this is what Claire has said. "Hi Sal, just touching base regarding the AHRC complaint against you after Anna Kerr shared the complaint document with me. The complaint document confirms to me that the Sex Discrimination Act 1984 is not serving the interests of women and in fact is able to be used as a weapon to intimidate and pressure women to concede to male demands. In my view, there are a number of particularly troubling circumstances about your case, which, if you were minded to do so, would be worth publicising now that you are able to release details of the complaint. Number one, the fact that the AHRC has decided to accept a complaint about you offering a female-only app, despite the fact that we know Australian women often face online abuse, death threats of violence, and sexually explicit threats from males. Two, the fact that you have been directed to attend a compulsory conciliation while pregnant, when we know the stress that can be a risk factor in pregnancy. Three, the fact that the AHRC has accepted a complaint which openly compares women's rights groups to the Ku Klux Klan. We did. And complains about women's groups being allowed to have websites, email addresses, and Facebook groups. And four, either it is unlawful in Australia to have female-only online spaces despite the prevalence of online abuse against women, or it is not unlawful, yet you're being compelled to attend a conciliation hearing with a male despite doing nothing wrong. If you're planning to go ahead with publicising the complaint against you, I'd be happy to put the questions on the parliamentary record about the above matters. Of course, it's entirely up to you and your legal team how to proceed, and if you want to publicise the complaint, perhaps the best way forward is for you to draft a statement confirming the complaint and the personal impact it's had on you and the above issues that it raises for Australian women. So, yes, we are obviously going to be publicising it as much as possible. I've spoken to Claire, I've said, basically anything that we can do to help, poor Annika, bless her, she has experienced, the full extent of my baby brain and stress in all of this, because I've had breakdowns about it, just picturing going to court for the next few years and this being like taking up so much of like my life while I have to work for, I mean, Giggle is an 18-hour-a-day job, and then having to do this on top of it and wanting to have some kind of fun in the next few years, and this man will never understand what it's like to be pregnant dealing with stuff like this. So basically, the barrister that we have involved in the case thinks that we will be fine and it will be thrown out because so we got the complaint on the 20th of January. On the 21st of January on Twitter, he was boasting that he's on Giggle. If he is on Giggle, I don't know where he is on the app. I can't find him. He's used somebody else to get on. He's using a phone number I'm not aware of. But if he's on the app, what's the complaint about? He's on there. There's no discrimination. So in my opinion, that's like sort of on those grounds alone. Now this is also, as I said, like a man who, he's called my personal phone number saying that he wants to get on the app, and he actually included that in the complaint, saying that it was a reasonable measure to get on to it. Now, Giggle has over 20,000 members worldwide. Not a single other woman on the planet has called me saying I can't get onto the app. We haven't even a way to get on, like a help like mine. It's just, I mean, his text, that's like, I wouldn't have known who this person is aside from the fact that they texted me and called me. And I actually, when it happened, I called my dad and was like, what should I do? And he just said, just block his number straight away and don't tell your mother because she'll freak out, because my mom was just constantly panicked about all of this. And so I didn't. And then because we got the human rights complaint, I had to tell mom. And so now mom's even more panicked. And yeah, so it's just been like a nightmare. But basically, if we don't, so hopefully it's just dismissed. We don't even have to go to conciliation, which would be really lovely. In the event we do, basically, in the complaint, it's been asked that to settle it, I allow males on the app, including him, and I also get re-education on what sex and gender is, which I can't believe the Australian Human Rights Commission has sent a document to me saying that I need to be re-educated, and not to like whataboutism it, but what about my human rights of like free thought? And my part of it, the whole thing has been, I have the human right to identify a male when I see one, and I'm not giving that up, and that's what it comes down to for me, for female spaces in general. Conciliations are not a waste of time because I'm not going to do these things. I'm not going to allow males onto the app. I don't think it's a human right to use an app. It's an app. There's like so many other apps. There is an app, a social network that exists. It's called like Furzo or something. It's got 50,000 members. It's for furries. It is specifically for furries, and it exists. And if I went on that and said I think furries is a weird thing, I'm pretty sure I'd be kicked off. And fine, like I'm not welcome there. The world still turns. I don't need to be part of this. It's cool. Just coexist in the world with it. So yeah, I'm not going to agree to anything in conciliation, so it is an utter waste of time. He then has 60 days after that to decide whether he takes us to federal court. And so then if he does, we go to federal court. And so basically, like this is what I've been talking with Claire about, is the legislation has to be tested. I'm the eternal optimist. So I'm like, every time we do take these things to court, like when we see it in the UK, we win, basically. Eventually, we win. Like even in Scotland right now, they're testing the legislation by like biological sex versus gender identity, and that biological sex has meaning to it. So all it has to happen here is it needs to be just firmly established. I would prefer it if it was like an all-girls school that did this and not a startup. But okay, like we have to do it. So yeah, and we've talked about it just so long at Giggle HQ and just what the journey will be. our prediction is that we'd probably lose in federal court, but we'd take it to the High Court. So that would be the journey if that's what it has to be. Yeah, so that's all of that. So that's hopefully really exciting. And yeah, I've talked to her in the middle. Hopefully now we can start talking about it, get it out there that this is the stuff that's sort of happening. So let's talk about specifically female spaces now. So I have to say, when we were developing Giggle, my mum and I got the idea for it in August 2018. I had no idea any of this was happening. I was very much in the Me Too world because that's what I'd experienced. I've been in Hollywood for 10 years. It's as bad as what you think it is. My best friend was actually Harvey Weinstein's longest serving female assistant. She was just as tortured as all of the other ones. She didn't know about the rapes, but she knew. Everyone knew he was horrible. And like, for example, I had 2 male managers and 2 male agents. I wrote romantic comedies with strong female characters. Everyone I met with were men, all of the executives, all of the directors, producers. They were constantly saying to me, like, just get Liz to share your scripts with Harvey. He'll buy them, they'll get made, they'll have a career. And she never would. And I remember at the time, this is about 2013, 14, I was, you know, that moment of like, oh my God, does my best friend just not think I'm good? And it wasn't until 2017 that she told me that she knew what he did with girls, so she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't share my work with him. So I'm like forever indebted to her that she never did. And so when the first time it ever happened that I was like sexually assaulted, I was leaving a meeting. I was wearing jeans actually just like this and a t-shirt. This is what I've worn my whole life. So like not overly feminine or girly, let's call it non-binary. And the man sat on the couch with me, which was odd. Usually in meetings, you know, they'd sit on the other side of get you on the other side of the thing, and you sit there talking about why you should be this person to write a movie for them. But he sat on the couch with me, which was like, that's really weird. And then as I was leaving, he went to shake hands, and he just went hand past and just put it down my pants and literally did the grab. I can't hate the word, so I'm not going to say it. And said, "You look great in skinny jeans," and then just opened the door to let me out. And I was so, you just like have no idea what's just happened. And I like walked to my car the whole time just thinking like wondering like, did I just dream that happened? Like I didn't even believe myself. And so I immediately called my agents and managers and told them, this is 4 men. And they said, well, he just called, he loved you, he wants a script, so just write him a script, wow him with a great script. And they weren't actually going to pay me to do it, I was going to write it on spec and they were going to take it straight to a studio, which kind of like a great position to be in a sense, but I was like, no, I'm not. I don't want to be in a room with this man ever again. So I didn't write him a script. So who do you think was called unprofessional? So it just continuously like started to affect my reputation professionally, that I didn't deliver work, or I was flaky, all that sort of stuff. And I was like, no, I'm not. I have a proper reason for this, but the people who are in control of my career weren't listening to it. So I just stopped telling people, and I never told my parents because I knew, like, at this point I was 27, 28. I knew that if I did, they would fly over and drag me home. And I didn't want to give up. I refused to give up the dream I'd always had my whole life. So I just went through silently with it for 10 years until the Me Too stuff broke. And when it actually broke, I'd left LA. I'd had a producer, he was a friend at this point, but it was an actual attempted rape situation. And I was like, I've got to leave LA. So at this point, I was actually in Belgium of all places, just traveling around. I was floating around and I ended up in Europe. I just was like, I ended up in Belgium and I was staying at a friend's place and I was so depressed and detached from the world. And I was like, I liked being in a foreign country where I didn't speak the language because then I wasn't under any pressure to communicate with anybody or, talk basically. So I could just sort of just close up. I was completely closed. And it was then, while I was there, that the Me Too stuff in Hollywood started to happen. So when it all started to come out, some other female writers, which there aren't that many, and they weren't, but even some female executives that I knew, we all started to message each other and be like, "Oh, I've had these situations." None of us had ever communicated them with each other before because we weren't supposed to. It's like designed to be isolating, and that's the world over. It's just so highlighted in an industry like that, but it's designed to keep you separate from each other. So I had finally like a complete nervous breakdown about it all, and I came back to Australia and went into therapy about it, like for trauma therapy. And the thing that my therapist kept saying to me was, you need a strong female support network in your life because you've cut it out completely. And so when my mum and I were talking about it, and she was traumatized by what had happened because she'd had stuff happen to her in her childhood, and she'd spent her whole life protecting me to make sure nothing had happened to me. And so felt like an utter failure as a mother because it had happened, and despite it not being her fault. And it was her idea. She was like, let's just create an app where women can just talk to each other and there's no men around, so that that there would always be a female space sort of in the palm of your hand, no matter where you were. And we had no idea how to create an app. No idea what that meant. It's crazy. And just on that, whenever media writes about the creation of Giggle, they leave out all of the stuff I've just told you, and they go, "Oh, it was over a glass of wine with her mother that they came up with the idea." And I'm just like, you're just trying to make me sound as ridiculous as possible. It was like a drunken whim. No, we were self-medicating with wine at that point. So we went full into developing mode. My dad was amazing and just did so much research on how we could do this, and we created a working demo to get investors and go to developers and blah, blah, blah. And so through all of this is 2019 by this time, I hadn't even looked at anywhere where this stuff would be. I was still focused on the Me Too realm of it all. And so the concept of trans women came up. And obviously, as I said, we've got investors at Giggle, and we answer to them sometimes. And we had a meeting, and I was the only one who said yes to them. And there was a context for this. I'd lived in LA and New York. I'd met a bunch of like what we would know as like sort of like transvestite sort of guys who knew exactly who they were. They were always really funny and nice. It was actually a really great sense of humor about, and I sort of always liked that they were able to sort of laugh at themselves of like, yeah, this is my coping mechanism. I know who I am. And yeah, they were always some fun. So that in my mind was who I was defending, and thinking that I'd seen like some things about, being inclusive, and I was like, like being nice and polite, that's cool. I just didn't actually think of it much more. And I was like, yeah, okay. So no one else at Giggle agreed with me. And these are people who didn't know anything that was going on either. Their just instincts were like, they were like, no, you were wrong. You're wrong. Just keep this straight for like female women. And I remember saying, I was like, it's 2019. You have to be. So, anyway, so I overruled. Like Mum and I are the directors of the company, and I had a bigger stake in it. I overruled on this particular one. I said no. They can come on. And I'm pleased that I did in this respect, because we now actually have the evidence of what happens when you allow that. So we actually created a secondary onboarding to be able to have trans women on the app, because I don't know if you know this, but to get onto Giggle, there is a verification selfie, and it's software that says whether you're male or female. And it works with 94 to 95% accuracy, and it's backed up by humans monitoring it at all times, so we check everything. And so like, I was like, well, we have to have a secondary way for these men to be able to get on, because it won't work for them. And it was just going to be like, just contact us, and you'd have to take like a specific selfie doing some sort of symbol or something so we knew it was you at that particular moment. And we never launched it with this. So February 2020, we had Giggle on the Google Play and App Store, and it had been there for about 2.5 weeks doing bug testing just to see, if everything was working. A handful of women around the world knew about it. And I did a Instagram story about misogyny I was dealing with at the time with Giggle, because there was a 60-year-old man who wanted to be the CEO, and I said no. And he called me Hitler. He was just crazy. And so I was dealing with that. I was just like, this is just the misogyny that I was dealing with behind the scenes, actually. I just needed to vent it. And so I just did it. And I don't know how anyone found this. I had no presence on anything in my, or on Instagram especially. But the trans rights activists of Reddit and Twitter found it and found Giggle. And we woke up one morning to thousands of downloads and negative reviews and abuse, and our security settings for the verification and everything weren't properly implemented yet. We were testing the app, and some of the coders who are men needed to be able to get on and off the app, and so we couldn't have them constantly not being able to do it. So men could get on at this particular point, and they all just made profiles, kill TERFs, rape TERFs, just thousands of them. I'd never heard the word TERF before. I had no idea. So it was on the 7th of February 2020. So I immediately, Mum was having a nervous breakdown. We had media requests from Fox and a few of Forbes, who never ended up putting anything that I said in their articles. They just wrote them without my comments. So I ventured into Reddit and Twitter to find out more about this, and I found the gender critical subreddit, and which wasn't, to be honest, the most welcoming place, because I didn't know what I was talking about, and they did, because you don't even realize how much, even if you aren't involved in it every day, just peripherally, how much Be Kind affects you and dictates how you conduct yourself. I still have it to this day. I'll have a moment of I did a tweet this morning about Leah Thomas and calling him a male. And I have that moment of oh my God, it's gonna hurt this person's feelings. And then I think of all of the feelings of the women that he's hurting and doesn't give a shit about. And I get over it pretty quick now. But so I found the gender critical subreddit, and everything they were saying, was so overwhelming, the information that they were saying, that I was you're I want to see if this is true. It sounded so unbelievable to me. In my worst nightmare, that men were saying that they were actually women, or that I think the one that shocked me the most at that time, it's that someone saying that the African and Middle Eastern women who are advocating to end female genital mutilation were getting abused by these men because they use the word female. I was there's just no possible way that's happening. And I found it, and I just couldn't believe it. And then I saw what was happening with lesbians and the coercion, not just the coercion, they were being the ones who were standing up against it and saying no, who were being abused, but the ones who were giving in. I was just okay, this. Basically, I was well, the feminists are saying they're 100% right. And when I did also, I balanced it out. I went to the TRA places, and everything they said was a lie. Everything. It was just, there was not an ounce of truth in anything. So this was it took about 3 days of intensive research of this, while all of the abuse and downloads were happening still. And the 1-star reviews, which you can't take away, and we'll just always have that. So it just is what it is. We made the decision, okay, the company policy will be it's female only, and that's going to be our journey with this. We didn't create the app as a response to it. We didn't know that this is what was going to be the fight. And we didn't say anything at all about it at that point. I was just no, we'll just keep going along, see how it goes with not sort of making a big deal about it. Like maybe it's one of those situations where if you don't make a big deal, they won't in return. I'm like a true romantic. I'm like constantly going like, it'll be fine. And then basically, but it was going like okay. We weren't getting abuse at this particular time, and then J.K. Rowling's thing happened in the June, July, whenever it was, and I was like, that's when I was like, okay, I have to join this because again, it was just like so absurd what was happening, and that's when I went and had a look at like the breastfeeding groups where there were men in them. Just I'm like, this is like dangerous, and this is like horrible. And domestic violence Facebook groups where men were infiltrating them, rape recovery groups where men were there just either as observers listening, or sharing their stories and making them the most important that everybody had to bow down to. And at this particular time, we didn't have any sort of public social media feed kind of on Giggle, and we immediately started designing one and put one into production so that we would be able to have a place where basically you can come and talk about all of these things, and there are no men there, which exists now and is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing and growing every day, which is really, really cool. And so, yeah, I'm not a natural activist or anything like that. Felt like I had to start speaking about it mainly to correct lies about what they were saying about my company, and being like, no, we actually did try to be inclusive, but it's not, you can't be expected to be inclusive of a group who exists to abuse the other people. If I'm going to be inclusive of trans women, Giggle is going to be an app where males come on to create profiles and posts threatening to kill and rape women.
Yeah.
What is my business model? Like, I don't, like, how do I get investors for that? So it was just a matter of, basically having to be in this position to say, have a place to say, no, we won't be doing this. And then kind of bring it to the forefront, especially in Australia, which has been, Kath knows this, it's been the hardest thing to try and get anybody in Australia to talk about this. And one of the things I want to share about that is, so in 2019, end of 2019, before I had ever spoken out about women's rights, anything like this, we actually contacted Mia Friedman at Mamma Mia about Giggle. I have her email, and I think she will rue the day that she ever wrote this. She said, hi Sal, we were having an event at the Gold Coast for Giggle. She said, I'm not able to make it to the Gold Coast, unfortunately, but Mamma Mia's 5 million plus audience, which I don't believe for 1 second, but anyway, that's another issue, are a bullseye for the Giggle app, and we would love to help you spread the word. So I'm looping in, blah, 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 to talk more broadly, perhaps about podcast integration. We would love to talk about it on Mamma Mia Out Loud, for example, the largest women's podcast network in the world. Look forward to hearing more and hopefully developing a relationship. Okay, I've sent Mia Friedman 28 emails, and she has never once responded to me. I have emailed journalists at Mamma Mia. I contact them anytime there is, they produce an article specifically about something that is completely against women's rights. I did it just the other day. They did an Instagram post mocking Claire's and Kath's Save Women's Sports bill, saying it bans trans people from sport, which it just doesn't do. Like, it's just lying. I'm just like, no. Like, this is a platform like Mamma Mia in terms of bringing this to women in Australia. It's why I'm just sort of trying to hold it to account as much as possible. Because I'm like, you call yourself the largest independent women's media platform in the country. Like, you are actively lying to women, and you are hiding what is actually happening to women's rights. For what I can't see is any valid reason, because the audience that they may be getting from what is this tiny, what is essentially a tiny minority of people growing because of anyone can be it, but there's overall, there's just no future in it long term. So I can't kind of understand why they keep doing it. I'm just like, you could just have a conversation and let women make up their own minds about it. But anyway, they won't, and is what it is. So we have sort of tried to engage these places and get, in Australia, the attention that we've sort of always wanted to, but it's sport, which I think is genius, is what's going to actually bring it to the mainstream in Australia. And then hopefully, like today, we'll be doing this with the female spaces where we can finally do it. But so back to actually female spaces, why this was important. We wanted to, Giggle was going to be just a roommate app. That's actually when Mum and I first started. It was just where women could find places to live. It was when I first left LA, I went to New York and I went on Roomie and a few other apps, and there were men on there that were like, "Oh, you can live here rent free if you walk around naked, or do you want a boyfriend as well?" And I'm just like, I just want a place to live, and I'm just like, I'm escaping sexual assault, and I just want there to be one thing in my life that doesn't have sexual harassment in it, like looking for a room to rent, just a shitty thing to be doing anyway. And it couldn't even happen. So it was just going to be a roommate to find female roommates. But then it was actually my dad was like, think bigger. Women need just an app for more than that. And so that's why we kind of just went bigger and bigger with it. And which is what it is now, and it's existing. And one of the most fascinating things I've noticed, being able to observe this every day, I don't actually engage on the app that much because it feels kind of weird to. I've always said, I'm like the one woman on the planet that gets no benefit of this female app because I get the abuse for it. I can't really use it. And I don't want to go on there anonymously or anything. It feels weird. So, but the conversations are different. When you observe how women behave on Twitter, and when I observe how they behave on Giggle, they're completely different. There's something so comfortable. For example, last week when the war in Ukraine started, we started discussions at Post about what was happening. And there was just these few day long discussions about politics and war and what's the point of it all. And there was hundreds of us, and then we finally went, my God, no man came in and explained it all to us. It was just women being able to say what we think how the world should be run, and no man was like, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about, or tried to justify bombs or anything like that. It was just, it's a completely different space. And when a male ever does get on, which there's been in the last 18 months, there's been about 10 in total that have infiltrated, that they get past, whether we just nature of it, that someone just gets past. They give themselves away within 10 minutes. You don't even need technology to find it out. I actually feel like I'm at the point now where I can tell a male or a female how they use words online. So one day I was having one day off, and my best friend, she's in Connecticut, and she messaged me and she goes, "There's a really aggressive woman on Google Talk." And I went on just to have a look, and it was when, the Norwegian handball team outfits things happening.
Yeah.
Well, there were posts about that, and we were talking about that, and there were these all caps replies to it about how women should be able to do whatever they want, and whatever, calling us all sorts of names for being against it. And I was like, that's not a woman. And it wasn't. They make them, I get to see in a digital space that these are not people who want to integrate into womanhood, whatever that means. I mean, I don't even think you have to define it. It's something that we just all know in ourselves what it is. You can't pretend, you can't fake it. You either are a woman or you're not. And if you're not, you have no idea how to actually behave like one. I also see how many men try to invade a female space every single day. The record we have is 12,000 in a day. That the most that happened, that was in December. So the 3 weeks before Christmas, I think it was. So I had like the worst morning sickness. I felt like I had the worst hangover of my life, and then I was on a boat. I was just throwing up constantly, and I literally like was there with the computer monitoring Giggle and a bucket, and I was just like throwing up while working with it. Because they were so basically I know that these are most of the ones on Twitter as well. They're little teenage white gamer boys who are these trolls. And who are basically influencing policy because people are taking Twitter crap seriously. They're kids. But I just constantly want to be like, call their parents. I see them, I was like, because the moment they take that selfie to try to get onto Google, we can see who they are. So what was happening? It was the gamer community, and they just spread things, and they wear the headsets, and so it's how we kind of know whether it's being spread. It's on Twitch or whatever it's called. I don't know. They're spreading all of this like stuff about Giggle and all, just trying to get on. Anyway, so we were having like the one day was 12,000, and then like another day was like 11. It started to go down, and the reviews that they were leaving was that Giggle is racist. That black women can't get on. Now, black women can get on. There's like thousands of them, and there's absolutely no issue between any race of women getting on the app. Except, to be completely honest, sometimes white women, especially like really pale Scottish women on a white wall with a white light, sometimes it can actually just need a photo or two purely because we have a liveness feature which makes it that so you can't take a photo of a photo, which they frequently do, to try and get on. And so it's just the software thinking that it's not pixelated enough, and it's the software thinking that it's a photo of a photo. So it's still nothing an assessment about race or anything like that. It's an assessment of the image itself. So the accusation of racism started, which I've noticed they're doing this with lots of people at the moment because the transphobia accusation's not really working. And so they're moving on to racism, which then, again, so we had content media, it was Business Insider this time, that asked, and my new rule is that I won't talk to any media unless it's in writing, because I will release everything I say when you release the article. And I'm really, because I did it with this one, because this guy interviewed me about the racism and then just ran a story about people being racist and taking what these white gamer boys have said as truth. And it's just, I can prove that it's not true. And it's one of the things that baffles me the most is that I'm like say like with like the Mamma Mia places, or like even it's been a struggle with the Australian here of being like, I have the data on all of this stuff. Like I can like prove things wrong and right, and they don't want that to happen. I'm like, it's incredibly, incredibly frustrating. And what's so devastating about it is that while you have all of this drama and horribleness outside and making female spaces seem like the most negative places on the planet, on the inside it just doesn't exist. They're the nicest, loveliest places where like, and having to then just like try and now convince people that women have a human right to be able to speak to each other without men around, which is what it comes down to for me, because I think that female-only spaces, the natural progression is for them to go online, and I think that there'll be more of them. I hope that there's more. It would have been nice if her had stayed on, but there's none. Yeah, so basically where we're at with our female space at the moment is, we have our first billboard test in Pennsylvania. We're 2 days into 30 days. Actually, the TF, they don't know about it yet. They haven't done anything yet. So it's been really cool. I kind of am wanting it to just, I'm hoping for the next week at least we get like a week of like just, it's because we're getting like great downloads from it and everything. And it's just been really nice if they stayed away from it for a week before the complaint started. Or if they didn't complain at all and we could build a relationship with this billboard company and do more with them. Because if it gets taken down, we're going to just lose billboard companies that we can work with. Like we had, we're supposed to do a billboard in January, but in Brighton in the UK, and the guy, I made the mistake, I didn't realize he was an independent, like sort of had just one guy at a company. I shouldn't have done that. But he just didn't put it up. And then when I questioned why, on the day it was supposed to go up, he was like, oh, we've just changed our mind of how we're going to do scheduling. I was like, I don't think that's how it works. And when I asked, I was like, well, can you give me an actual date of when it's going up? He told me I was aggressive. I was like, oh, okay, no, you just don't want to put it up. It all makes sense now. So then he gave us a refund, and so now we've done UPenn, and I'm just talking to them now. Hopefully we will have a billboard outside the NCAA championships in Atlanta. It will go up on the 14th. That's what I've got confirmation, just if we want it to go up on the 14th and it'll stay up. I only want it for a week though, but it's going to be for a month. It'll be a waste of time for the other 3 weeks probably. But yeah, so we're just going to do that. Then we're going to go to Scotland and do them. And the UK, we're sort of waiting on Australia a bit at the moment, just seeing how, like, first of all, it was just seeing like what happened with the Human Rights Commission. Just I don't want to go to jail. Or whatever it's going to do to me. I don't know. And so, yeah, so we're basically, these are our first ever marketing tests. We can't do online marketing. Facebook has banned us from marketing. Google hasn't banned us from marketing. There's just absolutely no point, because when you do Google ads for your company, your ad placements and the success of them is influenced by your rating. And because we're never going to have more than like 2 or 3 star rating, because they all come in and just leave thousands upon thousands of reviews. It's just a waste of time and money. But yeah, and Facebook has taught us that our ads are offensive, because we use the female ads. And then so we're blocked from Instagram as well. And so it's just like, well, just in the zeitgeist, the nature of the world that we're in at the moment, I don't think there's any point doing it that way anyway. I think sort of it's just have to sort of get creative and launch a company in a completely different way. But one of the things that it's proven is, like I say every day, every time something new happens, is it just actually proves the need for a female in this space. Like at no point have all of this inclusive talk and all of this, the tactics that they've used against us made me go, oh, maybe you're right. Like, maybe like we're post this. No, absolutely no way. I mean, the world that they are requesting is that women have absolutely no way to have a voice. Mm-hmm. And they can say and do whatever they want. It's a complete men's rights movement. And I can't sit down now and let them do it. So we're sort of in now. So yeah, so basically if we've got to go to the High Court, we will. And that will be our journey over the next few years. But I honestly think that we will win. I think that the more people that we get it out there and that they hear about it and hear about what it takes to do something like this, any person I meet, they're 100% on our side. I have 100% success rate in people. Because you find everyone has a line. Like, I had a sport person who I was talking about sports with, and they were really pushing back until I said, I'm like, okay, what about a grown 45-year-old man who identifies as a 6-year-old girl? Can he play Little League? And that was the person's line. He's like, oh no. I'm like, okay, there you go. You're going to invalidate his identity. I'm like, so you can find where they have their point. And once you get them to sort of think logically, everyone goes, okay, yeah. Because we're just dealing with facts. And ours is easy to win in that respect. So yeah, basically, that's where it is and keep fighting for female spaces.